Hey everyone! So glad to welcome you all to the UWGB Working Title Student and Faculty Reading Series. I'm Dr. Julie Case, and each semester I work with Dr. Chris Williams to put together a reading to highlight some of the work happening in the creative writing program here at UWGB. We have a lot of awesome readers tonight, and before we get started, I want to give the UWGB land acknowledgement. We at the University of Wisconsin-Green Bay acknowledge the First Nations people who are the original inhabitants of the region. The Ho-Chunk Nation and the Menominee Nation are the original first people of Wisconsin, and both nations have ancient historical and spiritual connections to the land that our institution now resides upon. Today, Wisconsin is home to 12 First Nations communities, including the Oneida Nation of Wisconsin, Forest County Potawatomi, Ojibwe Nation communities, Stockbridge-Munsee Band of the Mohicans, and the Brothertown Indian Nation. We acknowledge the First Nations people of Wisconsin. Tonight, our event is a little bit different than usual in that the second half of the reading has a humor focus. Our faculty reader tonight is Dr. Jennie Young, who specializes in humor writing, and she's teaching a humor writing class this semester, so we'll be featuring her work along with her students, Sydnee Koenig, Anna Powers, and Rachel Sankey. They'll share some of the humor pieces that they've done for that class and talk a bit about the process of writing those. Before we get to that, though, we're going to start with two readers who are not necessarily focusing on humor. So up first, we have poet Caden Wiles, and then we'll move to fiction writer Adam Cizdyn. After all of our readers have finished, we'll have a short question and answer session where you can ask them questions about their work, their influences, their writing practices, anything like that. And we'll open the Q&A a little bit later on through the reading. So if you have a question, please type it in then, and we'll get to those as best we can. Should be a super fun night, so let's go ahead and get started. Our first reader tonight is poet Caden Wiles. Caden Wiles is a junior at UW-Green Bay, obtaining a degree in Writing and Applied Arts and English Creative Writing. Caden specializes in queer poetics. His writing is rooted in the concepts of identity, abuse, trauma, and the inner workings of intimacy. In his free time, Caden enjoys spending time with his roommates, numerous forms of gaming, and you can often find him enjoying hibiscus tea while contemplating unsuccessfully the meaning of life. So please welcome Caden Wiles.
Hello, thank you, Dr. Case. Tonight I will be reading 5 poems I wrote that I put through the ringer many times and that appeared in my workshops throughout my career here at UW-Green Bay. These 5 poems capture my poetic essence and detail personal experiences of, as mentioned previously, intimacy, queerness, abuse of power, and the like. Therefore, small content warning for harsh language within some of these pieces and some intense imagery. Without further ado, my first piece of the night, Fall, Fell, Falling. Words in love, like the lust upon thighs, but instead, black ink upon parchment, writing the differences between tenses and subjugation, while pages fall like leaves within a cliche, within a poem, within a metaphor. But we need not for pleasantries, but instead focus on the pleasure of one another's consonants, and the way we roll off one another's tongues, like rolling your R's, but crossing your T's is much more like hands on quills and a full ink bottle at the elbow. As you write about seasons and you mention those leaves, again, like a bad habit, your bad habit of not knowing, no, not understanding the differences between how I fell in love with your lips and how I'm constantly falling for these nasty tricks upon my throat, and how I'll never fall for a writer again as long as I live. Moving on, we have Inventory Manifest at the New Tea Shop. April 21st, 2017. The first of many. The aroma of excitement danced softly in the air while herbaceous whispers kissed among the starlight. The honeymoon phase. So decadent. August 4th, 2017. We finally got it. Earl Grey was always played hard to get. Those deep bergamot strokes across velvet thighs, the undertones of sharp black tea like toasted honey. February 14th, 2018. It was all rotted. The white tea stunk like warm mold on stale white bread, while the black teas had bright blue crystals, invading the fragile layers, and the green tea never even showed. April 21st, 2018. All is forgiven. Can't quite say it got better. The playful herbal infusion seemed to have their rosiness back. They danced and danced until we had to lock up, and even then, you could hear their gay laughs. June 1st, 2018. Back to normal. Sweet tang intermingled with decadent whispers, promising life after love and love after heartbreak. Why do I want to go back? June 28th, 2018. Back to normal. Stiff mold engulfing our home, the floor sodden with hot tears and fragments of tea leaves. This needs to end. June 30th, 2018. It was closing day. The silence was only cut by the stifled sobs of the oolong. It was time to pack up, storing all those fragile memories among the hibiscus tea, forever my favorite, into brown boxes. The sweet tang of love with the bitter I love you. Moving forward once again, love so bright. When you look up at the night sky, what do you see? I ask him. Our bodies are close, and the night is nearly ending. His smile creeps upon his soft cheeks, and he begins. Is this a metaphor? Some English proverb? With a large sigh, his neck begrudgingly tilts back, his eyes scanning the black abyss, then returning to my clenched jowls and intense stare upon space. He gives in. I see stars and the moon. Just get on with it. And so I start. Those luminous gas giants, what do you think they say to one another? Do they whisper the secrets of supernovas? Do they instead dance endlessly in the sporadic light reflected off the faces of the moon? Do you think they cry when that inky blackness consumes the other? Does he feel the hotness of his last breath in condensation upon his cheek? His eyes roll back, and he stands so abruptly, a gust of wind makes my hair stand. I'm leaving. He doesn't use his soft eyes on me. His head is forward, and his strides are long. Do you need a ride? He asks. I turn to him, still on the ground, my arms propped under my head, my gaze is stiff, strong. I look at him as I have hundreds of nights. Tonight, he is a stranger. I begin again. Remember, my love, we are not stars. We do not glow. We do not thrive in the darkness. Those stars, they know what you did. They came to me last night, scared of what I might say. They held my head as I bled onto their light. They coddled what brightness was left within me deep inside. He does not turn back. So no, I don't need a ride. Tonight, I fly in wind among the stars. And moving on again to Confessions to a God. His sins snaked up my collarbone and slithered around my neck, hissing decadence and whispering scripture, all while taking a bite of the apple stuck in my throat. My tears soaked his cheeks as he pulled me closer. My fingers ran through his midnight hair, and my thoughts were lost among the sunny clouds until he grabbed my face to whisper deep into my crown. Abomination. He caressed the curves in my thighs and traced Leviticus on my back. His mouth tasted of red wine at 18, and his voice rang like confession at 22. We sat on the edge of the bed until he brought me to my knees, and then, and only then, did I run. My feet stomped upon the ground as I made for the hill, and on that eve, I made the jump to end my pain, but most importantly, to rip open the high heavens, tear apart the clouds, and that mocked me, to finally face him and ask between tears, why did you do me to such heartbreak? And last, but certainly not least, the click of queerness. It's like when I say I'm queer, no, not like Queer Eye, that's for the straight and narrowed in on that sense of self that created this lasting longing, like when we hugged and sex didn't follow, and when we tried to hold hands during the rain, only for lightning, its purple plasma erupting between our hands of God, oh so righteous in their language, so brutal to call us by our names, or rather call me by yours, as they say F.A. redacted. A gentle reminder of norms, so normal, like when you ghosted me because my body wasn't made of marble, and my ass was just okay, or when my name became that of my best friend, or even that time I fucked your brother, only to find a sameness in length. Only then I realized I am no better for this community, or rather, this clique. And thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Caden. That was awesome. All right, so up next we have our fiction writer, Adam Cizdyn. Adam Cizdyn is an undergraduate student working towards a major in information science with a game studies and an English major. Please welcome Adam.
Hello, everyone. I am Adam Cizdyn, as Dr. Case has introduced me. Tonight, inspired by the humor writers that will be coming after me, I wrote something to explore a more comedic voice that I don't normally write in. And so please enjoy as I present to you my darkly comedic parody of a crime thriller, Just Another Body. A red stain flowed down the marble surface of the kitchen countertop. It dripped down to the tiled floor, where it surrounded a crumbled figure with shards of glass next to it. The sinister fluid who had covered the monochrome floor with its own sickening color. It was a signifier of a heinous deed being committed, and it swallowed all that was around it. It was tomato juice that the victim spilled while being strangled. The shards were the glass it used to be in, and it made for a far more striking image than the corpse, if you ask me. That was extremely boring. There were no guts turned inside out, no flashy display of violence. It was just another body. I mean, what can I really say about it? The young man had been strangled. He was blue-faced, dead-eyed, and had bruises all over his neck. Heck, he had on a pair of black slacks and some stupid t-shirt with tomato juice stains on it. Unfortunately, I wasn't there to gawk. I was apparently here to solve a crime or some nonsense like that. I only need to stay at the scene for a few moments to soak in all the relevant details. The door into the apartment had been lockpicked to gain entry. The victim was in the kitchen pouring a glass of tomato juice when this happened and didn't hear anything. The killer then snuck up on the victim and strangled them because they were not smart enough to come up with something more creative. They were smart enough to clean the scene, at least. Forensics had already swept through the apartment and found nothing. I took one last look at the extremely boring body and walked out of the building. The officer outside asked me if I was really done already. Of course I am. Now get this place cleaned up. I have other tedious things to do today. This was completely true since I was in the press room of the station just an hour later. It was a really nice room. The department had spent all this money on carpets and wallpaper with this nice blue velvet color. Too bad there were always a bunch of assholes sitting around in here. The reporters all squawked up at once when I reached the podium. A bunch of indistinct suited bodies waved their hands and shouted for attention like wild animals. I broke the squalor with my own voice. Everybody shut up. I'm taking questions one at a time. I pointed in a random direction. We'll start with you. I answered basic questions about the crime and victim, the details of which were already fading from my mind. And eventually, one particular reporter stood up. Detective, given your involvement in the case, it's been speculated that this killing was the work of the Duck. Is that true? That's inconclusive. Lies. It was very conclusive. We had found a calling card at the scene. I feel like I forgot to mention that earlier. The reporter continued. Detective, how long will the killing spree of the Duck go on? 8 people have been murdered already. Wait, what, really? I have never heard this before. I guess I'll just drop everything and get the whole thing wrapped up by dinner tonight. The reporter looked unimpressed with my comeback. They gave a tired look and spoke one more time. Detective, should we just planned for more obituaries. Having heard enough insults, I walked out. I wound up at my desk soon after. I rifled through the evidence I had delivered to me and eventually found a series of small business cards in plastic bags, the calling cards. They were all the same. They had a picture of a bright yellow cartoon duck smiling devilishly and a message. Cops can't catch me, lol. Sincerely, the duck. It was one of the stupidest things I had ever seen in my life. Staring at the smug cartoon duck, I cast my mind back to the murders. All of the victims were completely random. They came from many walks of life. They ran a gamut of social categories. There was no pattern. I wouldn't be surprised if the duck was just picking random people they passed on the street or had some checklist for types of people I haven't killed. They were all killed in various mundane ways as well. Despite the variety of methods, there was nothing done to spice up the crimes. Every victim was just killed and left for discovery. The scenes are cleaned of usable evidence. The only reason we know each killing is done by the same person was the one distinctive thing about the crimes, the calling cards. Why would someone leave such obvious connective tissue between the crimes? The obvious answer was for attention. It was provocative, which guaranteed police and media attention. So they kill to provoke people for attention, and then what? This was the wall. How am I supposed to figure out anything from that? I toil away and find nothing. The duck gets what they want and keeps killing, in to watch us flounder in their wake. I once went to the chief and said, "We've hit a wall, and I think that might be what gets this killer off. Maybe we should just stop investigating. Maybe they'll just stop if we stop giving a shit." I got a punch in the face and a week of unpaid suspension for that suggestion. It was made clear to me that this case was going to be my entire life until the duck was behind bars. That happened after the 4th victim. Now we were 3 months and 5 victims later, and nothing has really changed. What the hell am I supposed to do? All I have to work with are bodies. They're just bodies. My reflection was cut off by the feeling of vibration in my pocket. I pulled out my cell phone. It said caller unknown on the ID. I usually forgot about this. The other reason I knew it was all about attention. I answered her and put the phone to my ear. "What do you want, duck?" You would think getting phone calls from the killer would be helpful, but it really wasn't. And the duck just called to spout taunts at me. The calls were a dead end. We tried tracking them a few times, but they all traced to burner phones that were long abandoned by the time we could find them. "I heard you found my latest card, detective. I look forward to hearing you make a fool of yourself in tomorrow's news." The voice coming from the phone it sounded like a duck, okay? And by sounded like a duck, I mean it sounded like a high-pitched squeal that was trying and failing to be some cartoon character voice, and occasionally there was a big exclamation of "whack, whack, whack" at the end of a sentence. And it was so bad that no one could decipher the person behind the voice. "Yeah, I found it. I have to say I'm pretty disappointed, duck. I thought you would come up with something a little more interesting on the 9th kill." "I do as I please, detective. Whether you're amused by it isn't my concern." Whack, whack, whack. Yeah, I guess so. God, this is stupid. I'm stuck solving a crime that I can't crack. There's no interesting aspects, and I have to listen to the killer taunt me every time they kill. "Detective, you've been a thorn in my side for too long now." I perked up upon hearing the unexpected sentence. "Wait, I have been? I mean, of course I have been. What you plan to do about it?" "I've taken someone who you have a deep relationship with, and I'm going to kill them soon." "Wait, what?" I racked my brain to think of who could have been kidnapped. I was coming up blank. "If you want to save them, meet me at the abandoned theater on 42nd Street at 10 p.m. Come alone." The phone clicked silent after that. You think I would be concerned about the kidnapping victim, but honestly, that wasn't even on my mind for the rest of the day. I was really excited. After months of dead-end investigation, this damn case was finally going to have something interesting happen. I was smiling all day. I told no one about the call. I was going to take this killer in, and I wanted time to think of a story on how I caught this scumbag through my stellar investigative intellect. I ate dinner at the office, stayed late to do some paperwork, and when the time came for me to leave for the theater, I grabbed my handgun and headed to the car. I left the station's parking garage and roared down the streets in my slick black Mustang. You may argue I could have picked a less conspicuous vehicle, but I paid a lot of money for that Mustang, and I was going to drive it everywhere. I was certainly going to drive it to my climactic showdown with a serial killer. I arrived at the theater late. It was a relatively small place. There was probably only a single screen inside. There was already a car parked in front of the building. It was a gray sedan with no license plate. It belonged to the Duck, no doubt. I didn't do anything to sabotage the car. The Duck wasn't leaving this theater. Moving inside the theater, I walked past the abandoned ticket counter and concession stand, and I walked into the room that held the single massive movie screen. The whole place was covered in dust and cobwebs, but the carpets and chairs looked like they would have been a vibrant red before the degradation. I slowly crept up to the front row before hearing a booming voice in the silence. "You're 10 minutes late, detective." Whack, whack, whack. The voice was piped through an intercom. I looked back at the projection booth and saw a shadowy figure standing in it. "Yeah, the traffic is killer out there. Am I to presume you've already killed your anonymous hostage?" Whack, whack, whack. You're stupider than you seem, detective. I never had a hostage." "I knew it. Everyone hates me, don't they?" "Correct, detective. I didn't call you here to watch someone die. I called you here to kill you." Whack, whack, whack. Nothing happened. Not happening. I pulled out my handgun and fired 2 rounds at the booth. The glass shattered as the explosion of the gun resounded through the theater, and the shadowy figure ducked away. I dashed out only to see the gray sedan pulling away with an indecipherable figure in the driver's seat. I hopped in my own car and gave chase. I wasn't even kicking myself for not slashing the sedan's tires. This was exhilarating. We blazed through the streets for what felt like hours, but was only somewhere around 5 minutes. Every pedestrian we passed in the dark streets had their eyes widen in awe as we swerved around corners, ignoring every light. On every straightaway, I gained on the sedan. And eventually, I was close enough to try putting an end to it. I pulled out my handgun with my left hand, aimed it from outside the window, and started firing. I must have fired at least 50 rounds at the car, though I don't remember reloading, so that's probably inaccurate. I grazed the car a few times before a hand in a black leather glove reached out of the sedan, pointed its own gun, and fired. It only took a 1 shot to hit my front right tire. I skidded across the asphalt for half a block before crashing into a street light. My first thought was about repair costs for the Mustang. I was promptly suspended pending investigation the next day. Something about how off-the-books car chases / gunfights are really bad for the department. Sitting in my apartment that afternoon, I received a phone call. Unknown caller. I picked up and led the conversation. "Hell of a chase last night, Duck. You got away, but I'm still going to find you." Detective, I called to make an announcement. I'm skipping town and giving up this whole killing people thing." The voice on the other end was still squawking like a bird when it made that announcement. I was shocked, but found I was even more angry. "What? You can't just do that. I'm pending investigation over this. At the very least, I'll probably lose my job. You can't walk away from this." I'm sorry, Detective. Things just got way too real last night. Whack, whack, whack. I was planning for a quick cat and mouse game where we establish a weird kind of bond. I was scared out of my mind when the bullets started flying. Whack, whack, whack. I don't think I'm cut out for this serial killer bit. The anchor was disappointing. That was just pathetic. I mean, can I at least catch you first? Maybe rebuild my reputation a bit? I'm already in the car with plans to drive across multiple state lines. Whack, whack, whack. I'm out of here, Detective. Have a nice life. The phone hung up and I was left alone. And so that's how it ends. The killer gets away and I get to sit here and be miserable. I guess I should have expected it. Months of dead-end investigation don't usually lead to stellar results. Holtz, I guess I'll just have to learn to let it go. Oh well, c'est la vie, life goes on. Now I know what you're thinking right now, but Detective, there's so much left on the line. 9 people have been killed, dozens have been affected. You're responsible for the killer getting away and massive public endangerment. This is all very factually correct, but I think I did my best. Besides, what's the worst that really happened? A few people died. They're just bodies. Thank you. I'll finish. That's all I've got, folks.
Thanks, Adam. That was very appropriate for Halloween season. So now we are moving into our showcase on Dr. Young's humor class. So we're going to hear from Sydnee Koenig, Anna Powers, and Rachel Sankey, and then Dr. Young at the very end of the night. So up next is Sydnee Koenig. Sydnee Koenig is a junior at GB and an English major with an educational emphasis, hoping to teach at high school level. She's on board of the UWGB chapter of Sigma Tau Delta, the International English Honor Society. She loves reading and collecting contemporary YA literature and has always had a passion for writing. Please welcome Sydnee Koenig.
Thank you, Dr. Case. So I want to start by just talking a little bit about Dr. Young's creative writing class. The thing I love most is the environment of cooperation that is in the room when we're in there. When trying to publish a piece we've written, she actually starts a round of applause when someone receives a rejection email. But by encouraging us to fail, she has definitely been a sort of catalyst for me to not really care, like what college students always focus on, the grade, the pass or fail, the submission or rejection. Humor writing is nothing like I've ever done before, and all you have to do is pay attention to the funny things in life. The odds are whatever makes you crack up is worthy of writing and will resonate with many people. The inspiration for my piece, quite honestly, was the impending deadline. It was my first humorous listicle, and I was skeptical of the whole idea of humor writing in general. I didn't think I had anything funny to say, but again, by forgetting my cares about creating perfect work and just writing what came naturally, that right there was my inspiration. My satirical personality is able to shine through, sharing the hard, ugly, and even hilarious truth. So speaking of that first piece, here it is, and I hope you enjoy. I'm depressed, and here's why you should date me. 1. Quality conversation. Ask me if I'm okay, and then I'll say, I'm fine. Yeah, no, I'm good. See, it's easy to talk to me. Then, if you have any soul whatsoever, you'll ask me if I'm sure, to which I will reply, yeah, I'm just tired. Then, like an asshole, you'll say, yeah, me too, and that'll be the end of it. 2. Companionship. You'll never be alone again, or at least not without the constant reminder of my existence. And not to worry, I'll take care of messaging first. This relationship will be the easiest you've ever experienced. Number 3, I'm loving. As in, you looked at me and said, hey, so naturally, I am forever indebted to you and don't deserve anything else. 4, I'm cheap. No, I don't promise that you won't need therapy when you're done with me. By the way, I have recommendations, but we don't have to do anything or go anywhere ever. Number 5, I'll never let you go hungry. Just kidding. You will definitely have to cook for yourself if you plan on eating anything ever again. I'll be over here starving myself and feeling like shit. But just think, this will be the easiest and cheapest dieting regimen for us. Number 6. I'm medicated. I can only assume that the idea of children scares you. Antidepressants equals birth control. Your little swimmers have a pretty shitty chance considering my decreased libido and natural fertility rate decline. Number 7. My good looks. I am like never before seen footage of a hairy-legged cave person that considers an oversized hoodie and mismatched crew socks acceptable for 24/7 wear. I don't do bras and basically never wash my hair, so it's a gross, disturbing tumbleweed on top of my head. This will make everyone think that you truly care about what's on the inside. Number 8. I'll be there for you. Despite what people say, no, I am not too clingy. Unless you think so, then I don't know. Do you think so? Sorry, I'll stop asking. I'm a nuisance, but please promise me, tell me if I'm being too clingy, because I can try my best to think about working on it, or maybe that's something we can work on together. I'm sorry. Also, do you want to watch another episode of Friends? And that's it. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Sydney. That was hilarious. I feel a little sad that our humor writers don't get to hear us all laughing because I'm cracking up over here. All right, so next up we have Anna Powers. Anna Powers is a sophomore humanities major with an emphasis in world cultures and a philosophy minor. Please welcome Anna Powers.
Hello. Okay. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about, like Sydney, a little bit about the class, what I kind of learned from it. I think from what I've taken from this class is that some things you can't really write about because you don't have the right perspective, and I think I've looked at a lot of things that way now. I think every piece I look at, I'm like, can I really write about this? What can I say about it? What can I put into it that's kind of more personal to me, and that way I can talk about it better. And I think with comedy, I look at anything sad in my life, I like to make comedic, so I think this is a good angle for myself when it comes to writing. And I think what I love about comedy the most is that even if I'm like in the most horrible state of my life, I can if laughing will make everything better. And so, yeah. My piece that I'm going to be reading, I got the idea from some recent stuff that was happening on campus. I know everyone heard about the body that was found on the trails, and so that was my inspiration. And I also was looking for something that a little more Halloween-y around the time. And I know that everyone, especially freshmen coming in, they all have had those pamphlets saying like, oh, please come to our college. We're the best college in the world. You'll do great here. I know how annoying that can be, so I want to do a premise of that. So anyway, my college tour is in Derry, Maine, and I think I heard carnival music coming from the sewers. Welcome to our Halloween campus tour. Our students keep complaining that this place is hell. So in celebration of the holiday, we will do our best to replicate the experience of actually attending here. 11:40 p.m. Arriving at our campus, you'll first take in the beautiful scenery and the luscious police tape around the entrance of the trails. Red balloons somehow float towards you as you drive by. 12 a.m. You will meet together for the start of the tour with our student guides, covered in blood all over their pale skin and eyes in a panic glaze. For some reason, the sound of carnival music follows their every move. 12:15. At the Student Services Building, we will discuss our cafeteria serving the students the not-so-mystery meat. The mystery is Rosemary from Health. The help desk features students working there who look like they want to stick a knife into your neck if you think of asking a question. Your neck does look delicious. The coffee house has a cup of poison coffee ready to be served right up. along with varieties of fresh blood. Of course, events here are led by Professor Pennywise. Don't ask about his name. Just don't. 12:45. We will walk over to one of our classroom buildings, but can't go in because it's still an active crime scene. 1 a.m. Fun fact. Our school has a ratio of 1 to 21. 21 being the bodies under the volleyball court, of course. Ah, there's our theater. We recently had a showing of Little Shop of Horrors. You could say that our star broke a leg, and an arm, and their leg. Okay, they're dead. Let's move on. 1:30 a.m. We visit the college dorms. Lovely place to make friends, hang out, or just hang. And of course, the perfect place to kill someone. Our dorms were recently redone. By recently, I mean like 30 years ago, and the carpets still have blood stains on them. If you're lucky, you'll get one with fresher stains. Our laundry rooms can be found in the basement, where the loud sounds of your screams is drowned out by our rumbling laundry machines and hard cemented floors and walls. 2:15 a.m. Our campus is small, which is good. That also means isolated, as we're a little far from the nearest city. More room to get close to each other. Now, are there any questions? Why are you covered in blood? That's it.
Thanks so much, Anna. That was great. All right, so up next we have Rachel Sankey. Rachel Sankey is a senior earning her BFA in Writing and Applied Arts, as well as Creative Writing at UW Green Bay. Outside of class, she's either playing Barista Simulator at the Daily Buzz or contributing to Green Bay City Pages. Her work can be seen in the spring 2021 issue of Northern Lights. She plans to graduate in the fall of 2021. Please welcome Rachel Sankey.
Hi, everyone. So this is my second live reading that I'm doing tonight, but I'm usually more of a poetry person, so this is a little different for me. But I'm pretty much gonna replicate what Anna and Sydnee had talked about before, and I think the biggest takeaway that I've had from humor writing right now is that it's hard, and I like a challenge, especially because this is a form that I've never written in before, and so I might write something that I think is hilarious, but the class might not reciprocate that, and so it's been a huge learning experience between what kind of hits and what doesn't. It's a completely new territory, but it's also been able to like open another part of myself that I think has been there all along that I haven't really been able to focus on, so I like that I'm able to kind of channel more of my what I think is a funnier side of myself. And I think Dr. Young is also an incredibly empowering professor also. I know we talked about celebrating rejections, and I actually get excited when I get a rejection because I know that means I'm one step closer to being accepted for my humor pieces. So my piece is about a random stranger who fat shamed me on my walk home from work this summer. So I hope you guys enjoy. It's still a little bit in the works. I'm actually working with an editor from like a humor writing pub where I just completely rewrote the form today. So it's a little new, but this is to Chad, the guy who fat shamed me today. Chad, I know you didn't mean what you said today when you told me to lose some weight on my walk home from work. You've just had a rough day. We all do sometimes. I mean, when I'm having a bad day, I don't shit on strangers to make myself feel better, but we all have our outlets. I get it. You've had a hard life. Most men do. If I had to deal with the trauma of my mom catching me jacking off to Elon Musk, I'd be a little pressed also. I wonder what kind of trauma that put your mom through, but of course it's not nearly as important as your trauma. Did you play Lucid Dreams by Juice WRLD 50 times over to help you calm yourself down? I heard that helps with most guys in your category. Shoot, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to stereotype you. I know that's not a fair thing for me to do when you've done nothing wrong to me. I know now that you telling me I'm fat doesn't count as a stereotype. You didn't mean any harm by that statement. You were just trying to give me some helpful advice. You read Tom Brady's book, and so you felt skilled to give me a diagnosis. I'm sorry again for making assumptions. Just because you drive a rusted F-150 with truck nuts doesn't mean you're playing Juice WRLD on loop. It might have only happened one time after your dad, Chad Sr., refused to buy you another Alienware curved screen gaming monitor. I could see the tears forming in your eyes as you sat at the red light in your truck. It's not your fault you smashed the monitor. You needed a cathartic release after your friends made fun of you for wearing a cropped Bush Latte t-shirt while you were at the gym. I'm so sorry they did that to you. They must be really insecure about themselves. There, Chad. I know it's hard to be you. Everyone is just so sensitive these days. You make one valid comment about a woman being fat and then everyone comes after you. You were just speaking the truth. The truth shouldn't hurt my feelings, but I'm just a silly girl who doesn't know how to toughen up. Maybe I could come to the gym with you sometime so you can teach me how to do a deadlift? I've been told you can get as far up to 65 pounds. That's pretty impressive. I'll even let you assert your dominance against me to make yourself feel better. There will be an empty Bush Latte can sitting on the hood of your truck after our workout for you to smash against your head for extra assertiveness. Oh, and Chad, one more thing. Thank you for helping me realize my full potential. I plan on going to the gym every day, twice a day, just like you. Pretty soon I'll be able to outdo you on the bench press, but I won't tell any of your friends. I don't want to hurt your ego. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. Sorry I was muted there for a second. Before we move on to Dr. Young, I just want to mention that the Q&A is open. So if you have burning questions or even just normal questions for our readers, they would love to have them. You just click on the question and answer button and there's a place to type them in and we will get to them at the end of the night. All right, so up next we have Dr. Jennie Young. Jennie Young is a professor and humor writer in Green Bay. She has worked in McSweeney's, HuffPost, Education Week, Inside Higher Ed, Slackjaw, Weekly Humorist, The Satirist, Human Parts, Better Humans, and others. She studied at the Second City Chicago and has a PhD in Rhetoric and Discourse Studies. She's the editor of the academic satire site, The Monocle of Higher Ed. Please welcome Jennie Young.
Hi, everybody. All right, so I've been writing humor for a few years now, and I wanted to start with the first humor piece I ever wrote, which most of the time I write satire, but this is more situational humor, I guess. And I want to echo what a couple of my students said, which is, you know, part of writing humor is just being alert to how funny things are in everyday life. So this was really an account of just something that actually happened when I went makeup shopping at Sephora a couple of years ago. So the title is "The Sephora Girls Are Making Me Feel Bad." Okay. Jessica, a beautiful 20-something cosmetics sales girl, greets me when I walk in and asks if she can help me find anything. Well, I say, I'm looking for something that's a moisturizer, but also matte and also tinted and also has SPF. I want one product that does all face things. I just don't want to do a bunch of steps. So like a BB cream, she says, as though it were stupidly obvious, as though I'd walked in and said, so I'm looking for like a very tall animal and like one that's from Africa and also that has like a super long neck for eating from trees and that's like brown and yellow spotted, and put her in the position of having to say, so like a giraffe. Sure, a BB cream, I say, whatever that might be. It stands for beauty balm, she says. Beauty. Balm, she repeats again, pointing to the words beauty and balm on a tube as she snags it from a nearby shelf. I then repeat the words aloud too, so that Jessica knows I'm with her. What's your skincare regimen, she asks. Unjustifiably, I mentally accuse her of thinking it's spelled regime. I wash, I say. But I mean, like, what's your regimen? She repeats, enunciating the word regimen. I mean, what products do you use? And in what order? What's your routine, she tries, in case I didn't understand the regimen, I guess. Soap, I say. I wash my face with soap, and then I'm done. After the soap part, I don't do anything else. That is the end of my routine. After the soap, I go to work. This conversation is getting weird and uncomfortable, but I feel like she set the tone that we need to be very precise. Well, maybe you could like have a little routine, she says. Maybe you could moisturize in the morning, because the one thing we find with aging skin is that the BB cream tends to like sit on top of it. It creases in the lines and it doesn't even look like skin. Maybe what you really want is something that highlights, like a CC cream. What I really want is to point out that the BB cream was her suggestion in the first place, but I bite my tongue. I still don't even know what BB cream is. Okay, well, then a CC cream, I guess, I say. Is your skin oily, dry, or combination, she asks. Definitely oily, I say. It gets really shiny. I think it's dry, she says. No, it's really pretty oily, I say. It always has been. She then offers the theory that I just think my face is oily because without a skincare routine that involves the correct combination of multiple products, my skin is confused and therefore overproducing oil to guard against dryness. Jessica and I seem to be at an impasse. This theory sounds very confusing and unscientific to me, and I'm trying to unpack it when I notice from Jessica's expression that she's afraid she's losing me and her commission. She then makes an impressively rapid and strategic decision to cover the left half of my face with a BB cream for oily skin and the right half with a CC cream for dry skin. First, though, she applies a moisturizer under the BB cream to combat the previously referenced aging skin problem and a mattifier underneath the CC cream to cut down on shine. CC creams highlight the skin, but that can sometimes manifest as shine. We seem to be caught in some sort of weird cosmetics application catch-22. I suggest to Jessica that since my skin is oily anyway, how's about we just skip the moisturizer and go right to the BB cream, thus satisfying my goals of an all-in-one application as I stated initially. I just think that for someone your age, a CC cream is more appropriate, Jessica explains without further elaboration. I study Jessica as she proceeds to apply multiple layers of multiple products using multiple tools to each side of my face. She has perfect teeth, and they are so white that I think they may be the actual color of Go Toward the Light white. They are that pure. Her bright white teeth make her look like a tiny wolf. At this point, I reiterate that what I was really hoping for was one product that I could just put on my face in the morning and be done with it. Right now, we have moisturizer followed by mattifier, followed by either BB or CC cream, followed by mattifying powder. Jessica ignores my question about getting down to one product. It seems to her a ridiculous notion and one unworthy of her consideration. She continues dabbing. You want to dab, not wipe, she says, at my nose with her makeup brush. I don't usually use makeup brushes, I say. I'll just use my fingers. Oh, you can't use your fingers, Jessica says. If you use your fingers, it's just like using only half the makeup you need. It's wasteful. What? I'm completely confused. While she adds yet another product, a shimmer cream, to my cheekbones, I try to make sense of all this. Within a few seconds, I think I've got it. Oh, you mean because the makeup soaks into my fingers instead of going on my face? No, our brushes are antimicrobial, she says brightly. Wait, what? I wonder to myself if Jessica knows what a non sequitur is and consider whether that's something we could talk through, but I decide to let it go because I'm getting increasingly concerned about how much all this is going to cost. I try again in an attempt to put Jessica's last two nonsensical statements into some sort of coherent pairing. So if I use my fingers instead of the brush, I'll get microbes from my fingers onto my face, and isn't that likely to happen somehow anyway? Do I even have all these microbes on my fingers? This is going nowhere, and Jessica doesn't even respond. So how much does the brush cost? I ask Jessica. It's $39, she says, and it lasts 8 years. I agree with Jessica that $39 does seem like a fantastic deal for something that is small and plastic and unnecessary. She finally finishes both halves of my face, and she hands me a mirror. To be honest, she's worked a miracle. I don't look like a cover model, but I do look like someone who has really great skin, which is not the case. I can't tell the difference between the right half and the left half, but I assume that's because the mattifier is counteracting any shiny effect caused by the CC cream, and the moisturizer is counteracting any dry effect caused by the BB cream. I think there's powder on both sides. I'm still confused, but it doesn't really seem to matter. The bottom line is that in order to achieve this effect, I will need to purchase either a moisturizer and a BB cream, or a mattifier and a CC cream, plus powder, plus the shimmer cream, plus the brush, plus the little bottle of spray that is used to keep the brush antimicrobial for the next 8 years. At Jessica's urging, I opt for the CC cream combo. She smiles at her masterpiece, satisfied, and piles up the goods into my hands, which total approximately $150. I thank her and meander around for a few minutes until she turns her back, at which point I chuck the entire collection and grab an $8 tube of Maybelline foundation on my way home. I try it on when I get home, and it looks awful. It's orange and pasty, and it does sit in the lines of my aging skin. Damn that little Jessica. Okay, that's the end of that one. I'm going to go to something much different next. So this is a listicle, and the title is Simple Lines to Drop for Getting Out of Babysitting Your Friend's New Baby. How to preemptively eliminate yourself from consideration. Your baby looks so flexible. Have you seen that Dayline episode about the swimming babies? Anyone can breastfeed, right? My cat would love that baby. So newborns sleep on their tummies and only on their tummies, right? Pet pythons are a lot cuddlier than people think. Is your baby's passport up to date? He'll fit right in my backpack. My ADHD is really getting so much better. I've always wanted to try co-sleeping. What is all this nonsense about peanut allergies? The last time I took a baby to an escape room, it did not go well. Your baby is gonna love Times Square hide and seek. It's cool how super resilient babies are. What does your baby like better, slip and slide or lawn darts? It's okay if I pretend this is my own baby sometimes, right? If you guys die, can I have it? Okay, and that was in Points in Case, which is an online humor publication. Okay, I'm going to go to a McSweeney's piece that I hope will resonate, because I know, like, at least some people in this room are education majors. I used to teach high school, and that inspired this piece on McSweeney's, and it's titled, Of All Your Teaching Skills, Passion is the Most Important. So this is, of the pieces I've read tonight, this one is the most clearly satirical, in that it's, not just straight humor, but taking a jab at something about education. And it's written in the form of a letter. Dear prospective teacher, are you passionate? I mean, really passionate? Are you so passionate it hurts? Because here's the thing. People rant about how teachers are underpaid, but if we compensated teachers like actual professionals, how would we know if they are passionate? Above all else, America's teachers must be passionate. And the only way to tell if someone is passionate about something is to gauge how much they're willing to suffer for their passion. So before you become a teacher, think about how badly you want this. For example, in addition to being criminally overworked and underpaid, you also might get shot. Are you passionate enough to be okay with that? And are you passionate enough to be willing to spend your lunch hours passionately opening milk cartons and passionately screaming rather than sitting at a table eating your lunch like an adult human being? Because that's passion. That's commitment to children. And consider this. If we treated teachers well and paid them according to their roles and responsibilities, how would they be any different from the greedy people in tech, business, law, and medicine? People who not only demand high salaries, but who aren't even willing to buy their own supplies. People who can't get through an 8-hour day without going to the bathroom. You may wonder, doesn't anyone care about my academic content knowledge, about my grounding in pedagogy and developmental psychology, about my advanced degrees? No. Those things look fine on your resume, and they're definitely required to get you in the door, but in the end, we only care about passion and self-esteem, of course. Your students, not yours. Let's face it, professional preparation can only get you so far. Hiring an expert teacher without the proper amount of passion is like hiring a brain surgeon who's the best and smartest in the world, but not very passionate. In both cases, it's the lack of passion that matters. Do you think your students will ever remember how to write a complete sentence or multiply 7 by 3? They won't. Nobody ever needs to do either of those things. What they'll remember is how much you love them. They'll remember your passion. Right now, when compared to other developed countries, American school children rank 36 out of 79 in mathematics. That's slightly above the 50th percentile. Do you think we got that ranking by treating teachers like professionals? We most certainly did not. We've achieved that rocking level of success not by funding education or enacting pro-teacher legislation, but by relying solely on passion. You may be wondering, but will I at least make enough money to put good meals on the table, to provide for my family, to buy a home? No. You can eat your passion, trade your passion for goods and services, and live in a box made of passion. Alternately, and if you really still passionately want to be a teacher, you should try to marry someone in tech, business, law, or medicine so that they can support your passion and you too can live the American dream. Good luck out there, and remember, passion. Okay, I've got one more. Julie, do you want me to keep going? Do you want me to do one more? Okay. This one is from like a week and a half ago, so super timely. It's also in McSweeney's, and the title is, "As a Teacher, I Agree with Mitch McConnell. Parents should tell schools what to teach." Okay, which is something that Mitch McConnell actually said, and the piece opens with a quote from CNN about Mitch McConnell literally saying that parents should direct schools what to teach. Okay. As a teacher, the hardest part of my job is deciding what to teach my students every day. 6 years of higher education, endless professional development requirements, and 2 advanced degrees have all left me with absolutely zero ideas. I wish the parents would just tell me what to do. I'd love to avail myself of the knowledge of people wholly untrained in my discipline who believe that the natural intersection of Common Core and the coronavirus pandemic is deciding to hate critical race theory. It just makes sense. I want the folks who are losing their shit at school board meetings to be offered greater opportunities to influence the emotional development of our young people. I want someone like the anti-vaxxer screaming about good little Nazis to be put in charge of, say, sex ed or financial literacy. I want the dad who clawed the mask off his kid's teacher's face to advise on topics such as civics, philosophy, and the social sciences. I want the group who got into a fistfight over mask mandates at a Florida school board meeting to weigh in on the power of logic and intellectual discourse. Another perk about letting parents dictate curricula is that parents never agree about anything, so there will be so many new and competing ideas. It'll be dynamic. Some parents might want us to introduce more voices of color into our classrooms or focus on practical math, while others will just scream about Jesus. What a wonderful patchwork it will be. While we're at it, we should ask these anti-masking, anti-vaxxing crusaders to advise in other professions as well. They seem to know a lot about medicine, so maybe they could assist in childbirths or serve as psychiatrists. Perhaps they could even perform vasectomies and brain surgeries. Everyone would be cool with that, right? It's time we abandon this ridiculous leftist notion of arming teachers with intellectual autonomy and get back to arming them with guns. As a liberal, peace-loving hippie teacher, I've always been strongly opposed to such measures, but suddenly I feel different. I believe I'm ready for my gun now. Okay, that's the end.
Thanks so much, Dr. Young. That was fabulous.
Thank you.
All right, so we're going to move on to the question and answer period. We've already got some great questions. If you're still thinking of one and you want to add it, there's still plenty of time to post your question. Our first question is for our humor writers. It is, what's the most challenging, if you had to choose only one, thing about humor writing? And I think also the difference from other kinds of writing. So maybe for people that are considering doing this form of writing. So I think just to make things easy, we might cycle through all the humor readers kind of in the order that they read. I don't know Dr. Williams, if you want to come back to me in between or just kind of go through all of them, maybe that's faster. So we'll go to Sydnee and then Anna and then Rachel and then Dr. Young.
I think the most challenging part of humor writing is the editing process. It's really easy for me to get my ideas out there and on the page, but what can be kind of discouraging is taking it to like class and workshopping it and then realizing that it falls flat and it's not funny at all, or it's offensive in some way, or anything like that. But it also helps kind of to rein your thoughts back in and focus better on the piece. So I think it would just be editing and taking that constructive criticism, which could be hard, but is so important.
I think for me, a lot of what Sydnee said was totally true. And then a lot of it for me is like punching up instead of punching down whenever I make jokes, because sometimes I can be a little too harsh when I'm trying to get my humor to hit. And I know that sometimes I can be like, I can go in a totally different direction than what I'm supposed to be trying to hitting, because I'm trying to make people laugh and I'm trying to make people understand the whole joke of it. And then in the end, sometimes I can end up making fun of somebody instead of actually, I'm laughing at them instead of them laughing with me.
I think the hardest thing for me is not only like kind of what Sydnee said, is writing something that I might think is hilarious that completely just and flops, but is how technical humor writing actually is. Like, there is a lot you have to learn before you start writing it, and there's so many small details that you have to pay attention to, and that's from like beginning to end. So from when you're coming up with ideas, when you're drafting, when you're editing, and then re-editing, like it's just very specific and tedious in a way. I mean, the end product is going to be great, but it's very technical compared to just like, oh, I wrote this joke and it's funny. There's a lot more to it than what I thought, I think.
Sorry, I was muted. I'm gonna definitely agree with everything that that Sydnee and Anna and Rachel said. And the other part of it that's hard for me, I think, is having been so trained in academic writing, I'm used to explaining everything and doing all this setup and making sure I cover every detail. And there's just no room or time for that in humor writing, especially for online satire, which is what we're focusing on in the class. It has to be, you know, people don't, the attention spans are not there. So it's a really, no matter what kind of writing, you know, you really want to focus on, it's a great exercise in word economy and holding an audience's attention and getting to, you know, just like crystal clarity, so that the audience is not lost, because those things are so essential in terms of establishing premise, to get somebody sort of on board with you from the very beginning. So that's challenging. And then just the subjectivity of it, like the others have said, it's, you know, sometimes things that crack me up are not funny at all to other people. I tend to go way too dark. I mean, McSweeney's is really dark sometimes, but I admit I have had the McSweeney's editor tell me like, that's too dark. So, you know, taking that kind of feedback is sometimes hard, but also necessary.
All right, our next question is, what advice can you give to the people who are just writing, struggling to write, or anyone who just wants to do better with either poetry or story writing in general? And I think Caden and Adam and Rachel all want to weigh in on this one. And Caden, you have specific question for you, which maybe you can add to. So someone said, I was also curious what Caden's inspiration for the tea shop poem was about. If you feel like chatting about that too. All right, thanks.
Yeah, I can start with the more general question first. I feel like for me, when it comes to this constant like question of like, how do I get into this writing, and how do I get out of a writer's block, or therefore, and how do I do better with my writing? And I feel like the biggest advice that I got from Dr. Williams was that it's really important to keep reading, and it's really important to also read for yourself too. But more importantly, I think where I get a lot of my poetry like antics and the ideas behind a lot of my poems come from other poetry that I've been reading, and whether it means even taking a line or two, or even taking a word or an idea, or just a feeling that I got from a poem, I felt like was really impactful for my own writing. And I feel like I wasn't doing that, and I wasn't immersing myself in like a lot of different writers, so it was hard for me at first, but that's advice I could give on that. And then when it comes to the tea shop poem, I really enjoyed tea. And I also used to work at Starbucks, and I felt like there was a lot of waste, and there was a lot of just like weird antics about tea. And I studied a lot of it, which is really nerdy thing to say about tea. But I think out of that then came from this idea that tea is extremely complex, and tea is extremely interesting to me. And I then applied my own personal experiences of a relationship, and I'm like, let me compare what I was doing at my job, and let's mash the two, and thus created that poem, and thus created this idea of like weird poetry, but also like a manifest. So yeah, it was actually really fun to write, and I thought it was a great experience.
Did not realize I was live already. But for more on this question, I agree a lot with what Caden said. Part of it is like being immersed in writing can be extremely inspiring to have you write yourself. And yeah, it makes me think. I'm taking Dr. Case's fiction class this semester. And at the start of the semester, we did introductions, and part of that introduction was like talking about a bit like your introduction to fiction. What kind of fiction has stuck out to you from like when you were a kid, or when you were, now that you're in college, or just in your life, period. And that can be a major starting point. And the other thing I would say about like struggling to write is to pick a concept that's important to you in some way, because those will often motivate you to write more. And that's all I've got to say, really.
Okay, so this is always like such a tough question for me, but I think when I'm struggling to write something specifically with poetry, just because humor is a little newer to me still, so I'm kind of figuring out how my writing process works for that one, because it's going to be completely different than how I write poetry. If I find that I'm running into like some like writer's block problems with my poetry, I'm gonna step away from that. But I do a lot of what Caden talked about, so I will immerse myself in other poetry that's very similar to mine. For example, like I have a whole bookshelf up here. A lot of my poetry tends to be very like nature based, and so I have like Mary Oliver's American Primitive, or a bunch of other nature-based poets or poets who write a lot about the same things that I do, so I can kind of, one, read for pleasure, because obviously if I write nature poetry, I also like to read nature poetry, but I like to kind of tinker and see, you know, I can't ask Mary Oliver what her plan was behind the poem, but I kind of see how she wrote her stuff or where she draws inspiration from, which is, I think, really important. And then also to consume other arts too. Like, I'll listen to a lot of music, I'll watch a TV show. I take time for myself that's relaxing, but also rejuvenating myself to go back to something. But I never force anything. And then also, one thing I still need to really work on is allowing yourself time to write. Like, if you're always constantly rushing stuff last minute, it's not going to come out the greatest. So making sure that I give myself the time that I need to create something good.
All right, so we have a question about real-world issues. I noticed a lot of these works are inspired by real-world issues / stories and characters. Has anyone else here done something completely fictional, and how would you create a sense of relatable humor with niche ideas? So I think Adam and Rachel volunteered to weigh on that. I'm not sure if we have others too, but we'll start with them.
Okay, so in terms of a lot of stuff being inspired by like real world issues and stories and stuff, and like talking about have you ever done something completely fictional? It's a funny question because, like I mentioned before, you often as a writer will end up picking topics or you know, like things that resonate with you, and often that comes from observing the world around you. Ooh. So that very much informs a lot of writing as a whole. That's all I'll say.
Okay, so I don't think I'm going to be able to answer this question as well as Adam did, just because I haven't written a lot of fiction. I mean, a lot of my poetry can be like from relatable experiences or things that I went through, but when I write the stuff, it's not completely real, if that makes sense. Like, for example, I have a poem about like magic and going on a picnic, and it's from like me spending time outdoors, but obviously I didn't talk to talking squirrels or whatever it is. So I have dabbled in a little bit of that, but as for like fiction writing, it's not my niche, I guess. And then for the question of how would you create a sense of relatable humor with niche ideas, just because humor writing is new to me too, I guess I'm not 100% sure. Anna and Sydney have talked about this before, but you want to make sure that like you're writing from a viewpoint that you can write from. Like, you don't want to put yourself in someone else's shoes and then try to write humor if you've never been in that place before, because it's not gonna hit as well. So hopefully that answered the question a little bit.
All right, so we have two questions about humor writing, and I think I'm going to ask them both and kind of let our humor writers pick and choose what they want to address from both of these. So the first one is, it seems like humor allows writers to get away with more. Dave Chappelle has recently offended many with his recent special, and his specials are likely written ahead of time, if not workshopped. Is he being subversive just to be subversive, or is he writing humor that people don't get, or is he just offending people to be a jerk? A lot of interesting questions about humor and offending people and that kind of thing in that one. And then the next question is, as someone who has a very dry sense of humor, what are some safer ways to portray that without seeming deprecating and or mean? So I think we're going to scroll through most of the humor writers and let them kind of pick and choose what they want to talk about from those questions.
Okay, so I will take, as someone who has a very dry sense of humor, safer ways to portray it. I just go back to thinking about, Dr. Young has always said, when you're punching, like making fun of something or someone, you always want to punch up. There's someone who is higher up in stature, whatever, because they can obviously take it. But I think, yeah, it's just important to not punch down and mock or make fun of people. There's a fine line, but that happens over time with workshopping and stuff. You start to see like where that stuff fits in and how to take it out.
I definitely agree with what Sydnee's saying, and it's like you don't want to. I think with the Dave Chappelle question, I don't know much about him as a comedic writer, but I do know a lot of comedic writers who I've read and studied who offend a lot of people, and it seems like a lot of people get offended by their jokes. And I think the problem with comedic writing is there's always going to be somebody who's going to be offended by your jokes. There's always going to be somebody who takes it the wrong way or doesn't see it the way that you might see it. And that's usually the problem with writing with comedy, is there's always going to be somebody that the joke is not going to hit for them. And you just have to think about, when you're writing, especially with just writing comedy, you want to think about what the point that you're making, and you want to think about, is this point being like, does this point make sense? Are people actually going to see the point you're making? Are they going to laugh at it? And I just think, yeah, there's just always going to be somebody who's going to be offended by jokes. There's always going to be somebody who doesn't understand the punch.
Sorry, so it's like I've never used Microsoft Teams. Like, we haven't been in a pandemic for the last 2 years. I'll address the Dave Chappelle situation. It's weird that question came up because I spent a lot of the day writing a humor piece about Dave Chappelle, titled, hang on, I have to go back to the title here. So the title is Best Halloween Costume 2021, Dave Chappelle as an Old White Dude. So this is a little bit dicey to write, especially as, you know, being a white person critiquing a black man for acting like a white man. I do want to say my boyfriend and I co-wrote it together. He is a person of color. I don't think, and we've talked a lot about this in humor writing, that like, does every topic need your voice? No. Like, what is the reason? So I don't know that, I don't think I would have taken it on my own, but we wrote it together. Because Dave Chappelle is sort of acting like the stereotypical old white dude right now. He's, you know, said a bunch of, you know, at least arguably offensive things, and is now super befuddled that people are offended. We rewatched The Closer last night in prep to write this piece. And, you know, a lot of the jokes, they weren't even really that original. I mean, like, Dave Chappelle can do better. We've seen him do better. And I don't know if anybody's seen the recent documentary where he kind of screamed, "Am I canceled or what?" and threw the mic down and stormed off. And he's refusing, like he said, he'll meet with the LGBTQ community, but only if he picks the place and all on his terms. So the piece is basically addressing all that now. To be totally transparent, McSweeney's rejected it in 2 hours. So it's already been through, so yay, rejection. It's already been through McSweeney's and rejected, and now we've got it in submission at 2 other places because it's timely. So I don't know what's gonna happen with that, or if it even answered the question adequately, but it just seemed very timely in terms of Dave Chappelle, because it's a really hard, it's a hard topic right now, it's complicated. I'll leave it there.
Thanks so much, audience, for these excellent questions. We are about out of time, so we're just going to end with one question that I have, and we're going to go through each of our readers in order. So I'm asking everybody to tell us one piece of advice they have for aspiring writers, either in specific genres or just in general, and then one author that they really love that they would encourage us all to go and read. And then that'll be our evening for tonight. Thank you so much for coming. It's been so great to have you all here.
Alrighty, I think for a piece of advice, especially for poetry, is don't stop writing. Like, even if you have a stupid idea, even if you have what you consider to be just like dumb material, it's not. And then I can't emphasize enough how much I've gotten from the poetry that I hated the most, or the weird line that I came up with in like the middle of the night and I wrote it down. Like, I think it's really important to just keep going with it, and then from there you can edit, and from there you can, keep doing it. I think that's it's helped me so far. And then for an author that I definitely suggest everyone should read is Audra Lorde. She's unfortunately passed. However, I feel like she is one of the most incredible poets that I have ever encountered, and I feel like I have a lot to learn from her work. I feel like everyone has a lot to learn from her work, and I feel like it's incredibly important to study her. But yeah, thank you all for coming.
So, for my piece of okay, I am supposed to be live. For any piece of advice I have, it would be to not be afraid of sharing your work. That's something I've had to go through the last couple days. This is my first time reading in a public setting like this. It's insanely nerve-wracking and scared me half to death the last several days. But the fact of the matter is that just like if you don't read your work to anyone, it kind of just sits there on like your laptop or in your journal, and you don't get a chance to improve it. You don't get a chance to look at it any more than just seeing it for yourself. So share your work, or either in a more professional setting or even just with friends, because that's what makes it better. As for favorite author, I'm not sure. Since my answer to that question is, well, just consume more. Find anything you can. And it was mentioned when I was introduced, I'm a game studies major. I'm not even an English major. A lot of my background in learning even like the concepts of storytelling and writing came from video games, and my number one policy with that is to like just find anything that interests you and reach out to it. So I wouldn't recommend any author. I would recommend just find more. Maybe that's a cheat answer, but hey.
So yeah, I want to emphasize what Adam said about sharing your work, even when it's like not even quality work, even if it's just you ranting or whatever. Sometimes just getting your feelings out there and not letting them slip into the void, and just sharing your emotion with someone can be really helpful at times. As for my piece of advice would be, if you don't know what to write, that doesn't matter. Just pick up a pencil or open your laptop and start writing. It doesn't matter if you have no idea where it's going to go. Just start writing. I don't know what to write. I don't know what to write. I don't know what to write, because something will come and it might just be great. And then I love YA contemporary novels. I want to be a high school teacher and my bookshelves are already full. So I could list authors for a long time, but my one go-to might be kind of cliche, but Shakespeare. He's just my favorite, and he just has so many good things to say, and it's like you can never find a place to stop with him. There's so much to learn, and it's tricky, but get the right teacher, get the right materials, and you might really love it. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with Sydney 100%. And it's like, I think a lot of it is just what I can take from my advice is just write anything and everything that comes across. If you even find like words that inspire you, music lyrics, things that just thoughts that pump out of your head when you're going through something that's really emotional, the things that you want to rant about, just write it all down, because that's usually where you can get most of your inspiration, is from thoughts just popping in your head at the most random times. I've had times when I'm just sitting in a random place and this crazy idea just pops in my head. I'm like, oh, I have to get this down. So I write it on a napkin, or I just write it on a piece of paper any piece of paper I can find, because ideas will sporadically just come to you, and it could be something really crazy, but you can go off of that. Inspiration comes from the weirdest places. And I think an author that I would recommend would probably be Khaled Hosseini. He wrote Thousand Splendid Suns, and when I read that novel, totally changed my life. He's a beautiful writer. He writes from this perspective of both men and women, and he's able to write it from an ethnic point of view, and it's so interesting, so very descriptive.
Okay, so I'm going to go off a little bit on what Anna said. First of all, I agree with what Adam, Sydney, and Anna said about having your work read and critiqued by others. That's what I was going to say, but you guys beat me to it, because you're not going to be able to get better if you don't have your work critiqued, and of course, like, critiqued in a safe environment. But kind of adding on to what Anna says, carry a notebook around you or with you everywhere. Everywhere you go, have a notebook on you. I carry like a lot of small notebooks like this around. You'll see them all over my apartment. They're in almost every bag I have, because you never know when an idea is going to hit, and maybe sometimes that's an absolute garbage idea, but at least you had it down and you can work on it later. There have been so many great ideas that I have missed out on because I wasn't carrying some sort of notebook on me, or didn't even write stuff down in like the notes app on my phone. So I'd say to do that. Plus, it's an excuse to buy like notebooks, and I like excuses to buy notebooks. So the one author I'd recommend is a poet, and Chris already knows what I'm gonna say, and so does Caden, but it's Frank O'Hara. He was part of the, or he was a poet in New York, and so he writes a lot of stream of consciousness stuff, so kind of just what he's observing and what's going on in his mind. And reading his work really gave me like the poetic freedom to write in the same way, because I feel like there's a lot of pressure to not write about the simple things in life, kind of, or just like not write about, you always think you need to have like a bunch of complex metaphors and everything, but he's a good example that you can still write great poetry and not have to do that. And I'm really excited because I'm going to New York next week, so I get to live out my Frank O'Hara dreams, and I'm bringing my big old book of Frank O'Hara poems with me, and I'm very excited for it. So he is a great poet, would recommend.
I'll make this quick. One phrase: anchor yourself in truth, not jokes. Jokes are funny. However, if you can tap into some truth that resonates with people and shine the light of humor upon it, then that's probably a winning combination for clickable satire. Authors, David Sedaris. I mean, he's the master. Right? We're talking about humor writing tonight for good reason. So Me Talk Pretty One Day and Naked, I think, are the two best if you want recommendations of where to start.
All right, I think that is it for our event. I'll just conclude by thanking tonight's readers, Caden Wiles, Adam Cizdyn, Sydnee Koenig, Anna Powers, Rachel Sankey, and Dr. Jennie Young. I'd also like to thank Dr. Chris Williams for doing the technology behind the scenes, making this all happen. All of your work was hilarious and lovely, and you definitely made my night better. So I'm so glad that you shared your work with us in this public forum. Thanks to our audience for spending the evening with us, and thank you especially for your thoughtful questions. Working Titles will happen again next semester, and if you are interested in reading with us, please reach out to me or Dr. Williams and let us know. We'd be happy to have you. Thanks so much. I hope you all have a great night, and I'll see you next semester.